Welcome to Make More Marbles. My name is Brad Hart, and we're here to interview the game changers, the future makers, the co-collaborators and creators who are here to collaborate with one another towards a better future for all of us. Enjoy the show. We've got a great guest coming up for you right now. Welcome to Make More Marbles. My name is Brad Hart, and I am thrilled, excited, overjoyed, gracious, grateful, and stoked because I got a fellow Long Islander on the show. What up, Myke?
Hey, Brad. How are you?
I'm well, man. Thanks so much. We've tried to get together a few times over the months and get you on the show, and it's just been kind of like, oh, this didn't work out this time, didn't work out that time. And even this time, we were like, a ton of resistance was showing up to us being on this Facebook, and this, Zoom wasn't working, the mic wasn't working. Inexplicably, it would work on a Zoom webinar, but not on a regular webinar. We're like, all right, resistance is teaching us something here. We need to put this message out to the world, and that's what we're going to do. So we're live on Facebook, and now I can hear you, I can see you, everything's working. It's a beautiful life. I love it, Myke. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. For two busy tech-savvy guys, we had some difficulty making it happen, but here we are.
Hey, sometimes technology is just pointing you in the right direction. So Myke, for the people at home, I know you grew up in Long Island in Brookhaven. I'm actually from Ridge, which is just south of Wading River. I normally tell people Wading River though, because it's nicer there and people actually know where it is. So plus my family's been there for 13 generations. But for the people at home that don't know anything about you or kind of understand your hero's journey, help them to understand how you got to be who you are today and why that's so special.
Yeah. Like most people, I'm sure that's a long story to tackle, and mine is quite long as well. But to sum it up, I'm 28 years old. I live in Richmond, Virginia. I founded and run a digital marketing agency here in the city. And my journey started just as an entrepreneur at 24 years old, where my life was kind of in shambles. I was not in the best scenario of my life. I was not in the best health, and really was just in a position where the only place I could go was up. I was really not a happy young kid. And for the majority of my life, I always kind of had this scarcity mindset, was never very happy. I kind of lived in this negative, not good place. And a number of different circumstances just coincidentally happened at the age of 24, which caused me to kind of stray off on a different path. I made some serious life changes, relationship changes, health changes, and the trajectory of where I was going changed pretty significantly. And 4 years later, not even 4 years later, but here we are.
Awesome. I love it. And so tell me a little bit about some of the struggles you've encountered along the way. Give people a sense of some of the, people will respect you for your successes, and certainly you've had a lot of those, but they really love you for your failures. So tell us about a few times when things weren't going great, what you learned from that, and how you corrected course to ultimately win.
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, I'm really fortunate. The majority of my failures and really difficult times in my life were luckily before I ever even considered entrepreneurship. And again, when I jumped into the thought of even trying to become successful or just better my life or even better the lives of the people around me, my only way that I could go was up. So things have been great. However, some of my biggest struggles were just getting started. My life before entrepreneurship and trying to, I guess, chase down a path of abundance almost, things were really tough because I lived in a place where my life was revolving around getting drunk and hanging out with people that didn't necessarily have my best interest at heart. I was at a part in my life where I don't think the people that I loved the most and that were closest to me necessarily thought that I was trying my hardest. And I don't think that I made a good representation of them. My family, the people that I love, my friends, I don't think anybody was necessarily proud to be connected to me because of the life choices that I had made. So at 23 to 24, I was a bartender. And I was constantly getting drunk. I was really unhealthy. I was sleeping until 2 or 3 p.m. every single day, staying up late at night, going out to parties. And it's funny because I almost don't even really know how that happened. Because when I was in high school, I wasn't really the party guy. That just wasn't me. I was a top-notch athlete. I was captain of the wrestling team. I did have some good friends and I feel like I was focused. I didn't go out a lot. And then somewhere along the line, I got lost. Because at 18 or 19, I kind of had that entrepreneur vibe already. I used to actually make layouts and stuff on MySpace. I used to make MySpace layouts when I was 17, 18 years old, and I loved graphic design. So my struggle was getting lost between the ages of 18 and 24. And I got off on this really like dark path. My living situation was awful. I was living in this house that probably should have been condemned. This house was falling apart. My rent was $100 per month. And I was consistently actually hiding from the landlord and avoiding paying that because as a bartender, I actually couldn't afford $100 a month. And most people have this belief that bartenders just make all this cash and all this money, which in some cases is true. However, the lifestyle of a bartender and the struggles of living that way are that most of your money turns right around and goes right back into those same exact habits. So when I was a bartender, I was spending a lot of money on drinking and going out and kind of living this like party lifestyle. I drove a motorcycle as my only transportation at the time. And I was severely in debt. My credit was destroyed. My friends were not so great. And it was weird because I was comfortable there. And that was my biggest struggle, was one that I didn't even recognize until I kind of bumped into, I would call these laws of success, and people that were close to my age that were successful was such a culture shock to me. I never really understood that I could try to build a real business or become successful or make a lot of money or travel the world or even just be happy. So the number one biggest struggle was getting over the fact that moving forward in my life or becoming a better, more successful, wealthy, healthy person was even a reality. Changing my thought pattern to acknowledge that that could be a real thing in my life was absolutely the biggest struggle. Now on a day-to-day basis, now that I've gotten over that hurdle, the biggest struggle as an entrepreneur, I think, is delegation and cutting out fluff and just staying focused on results. As entrepreneurs, we tend to get really distracted on things like social media, and also the impressions
coming from somebody who runs a social media marketing agency.
It is.
By the way, I just want to pause because otherwise, I want to pull the gems out here, right?
Sure.
So, like you, I was a bartender. That's how I put myself through school. After school, when the world was coming apart, that's how I paid the bills. And I totally get that. Like the more you make, the more you spend. You end up hanging out with other bartenders. You end up going after hours. We start drinking at 5 a.m. We stop drinking at 9 a.m. You throw all your money on the bar at the end of the night. And that's just how it kind of went. And I did it in New York City. We could get anything you want 24/7. It was a little bit of a crazy time in my life, and sleeping till 3 and getting up and doing it all over again. So yeah, I totally get that. And I totally understand. What do you think was like the big key shift that you had to make? Like when was it so painful that you knew you had to make a shift?
So a number of things happened all at once. And we'll get pretty personal and vulnerable here because
Please. Absolutely. I think it serves more people when you're actually, hey, this is what happens and what can you learn from it?
Yeah. So we'll start from the basic things and move all the way to, the really like gut wrenching stuff. So I think the basic thing was at, 23 to 24, I think I was like hitting the age where things like family and time become, I think, more of a priority. Seeing my families on the holiday and stuff like that, I think made me realize that my life choices as an adult were off a little bit. I was 24, yet I was acting like I was 17 or 18 still, and whatever the reason for that is, I don't really know. But I definitely know that the choices and the decisions that I was making were not good. I had a serious problem with like lying. And I think it's because I wasn't happy with myself. So I would just lie about stupid things that didn't even really make sense. I would lie about going to college, and I would tell people, oh, I went to college, and that was not true. I don't even think I could have gotten into college if I wanted to. If I tried to apply, I think I'd get shut down to just about anywhere. Really the only reason I passed high school was so that I could continue to wrestle. So it started there. I think it started on this path of me like living in this fantasy world in my head that wasn't real. Where eventually I just had to grow up. So I think that path started at 24. And I remember having this conversation with my dad, and I remember him telling me, look, Mike, one day you're going to get fat and ugly and you're not going to be able to bartend anymore because nobody's going to want to tip you, and you're going to get replaced, you know? And it was kind of like this humorous conversation, you know, father-son type thing. But it really kind of made me think. I was like, you know, that's kind of a good point. Like what happens when, you know, I get a little bit older and some, you know, hot chick or some good looking stud young guy comes in? Why would I continue to be a bartender? Like, why would someone keep me around? And I definitely wasn't the most intelligent person at like 21 to 23. So for me to make that realization,
yeah, oh my God, you weren't completely fully formed and completely capable of making intelligent, rational decisions every single time when you're 21 years old?
Oh goodness, definitely not. And so me having that realization was actually like a pretty big deal. And I was like, man, maybe I should think about like, what do I want to do? So that was one piece of the puzzle. The next piece of the puzzle was I was in a really toxic relationship. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. Your listeners, my listeners. And I think that a lot of people are afraid to maybe speak openly about relationships, right? But I was in this relationship with this girl, and we were both equally probably not the greatest of people at the time. And so, yes, I did. So at that time, I had discovered, so this is all within like 30, 60 days of each other. So I discovered that I was dating this girl who was also living an entire second life behind my back. And not to point all the blame at her, I was definitely not the greatest person either. You know, I had my faults, I made mistakes, and was not the greatest other half of that relationship, right? But it kind of jarred me because at the time I was living in a lie, right? So I thought that, you know, oh, I don't deserve these things, and why is somebody doing this to me? But I discovered that this girl was engaged and pregnant with another person's child. And that really just, I think to sum it up, I think it just forced me to make the decision that I didn't want to be a loser anymore. I really didn't want to be the person that wasn't in control of my own life. I didn't want to be the person on the side of any transaction or relationship where like I was at a disadvantage, or that I was just for lack of a better word, just a loser. And I think that for the first time made me realize that the blame wasn't on anyone else. I think it was the first time that I was willing to possibly take responsibility for the mistakes that I had made. And there's a couple other pieces as well that we'll touch on, but that was a big one.
Yeah, that's a huge one. And I just want to, first of all, say thank you for sharing so openly and so deeply, because I think people out there need to hear this. There's a guy out there, or girl out there right now who's living that kind of made up life of like, everything is hunky dory and I'm great. Why is everything turning around me? It's not my fault.
Yeah.
Right. And when you finally start taking responsibility, that's when you can, you know, come across something that works better. It lives in integrity, right? In sense of, you know, hey, it's not a moral thing. Is your life working for you in this area or not? Right. I don't care if you believe in the Jolly Green Giant, only eat green peas. Is it working for you or not? Right.
Right.
So there's that piece. And then there's another quote, which I always love to say. And if you listen to the show a lot, you've probably heard it before, is that you can argue with reality as much as you want, provided you're willing to be wrong 100% of the time. Right. The world is the way it is, right? It's not changing for you or me or anybody else. Like, we can either get in the flow and figure ourselves out in relation to that and kind of add our value to it, or not. And our results will vary accordingly.
Right. Yeah.
So what was next for you, Myke? Where did it start turning around for you? So give people kind of the ascension now. Like, all right, so you hit bottom. This beautiful angel ripped your guts out. She's pregnant with another guy. And you know, she's totally lied to you about your entire relationship, and not to make light of it, but that sucks, man. I'm sorry to hear that. So you had a lot of pain, and then what did you do?
So there was one other little piece, which was really my living situation, and a couple other just like bullet points to go with that. And then the cool thing is my life starts to go on kind of this uprise. And for anyone listening, this is the very, very beginning of 2014 for me. I'm 24, and my parents, the people around me, they're not exactly proud of me, and I definitely don't blame them at that time. The relationship that I was in, where I spent most of my time, has now fallen apart. And my living situation disappears from underneath me, which, keep in mind, it's not even a good living situation to be in the first place. I used to have a bedroom that was, if you've ever seen the movie Harry Potter, I almost think of like the closet that like Harry Potter lived in underneath the stairwell. I lived in this tiny bedroom. I could probably touch both walls of the room just by reaching out like this. And there was no closet or anything like that. The bathrooms didn't really work. The appliances didn't work. It wasn't a good situation. I had a mattress on the floor and I had my clothes. And I remember I used to put like thumbtacks on the wall so that my clothes would hang up, because there was nowhere to hang my clothes. And so I'd kind of hang them on these thumbtacks on the wall. And I lived there for like a year and a half. And this is where I was in this relationship. This is where like my bartending career, or whatever you want to call it, like bartending job happened. This is where I collected all these like awful friends around me. And I think really just where like I lost grip. And we got a notice from our landlord that said, hey, you've got 30 days to get out because this house needs to be basically gutted and rehabbed. You know, the whole house needed to be redone because the bathroom was like caving through the second story floor, and it wasn't good. And the house was right next to this bar. So if I wasn't home, I was either at the bar or working at the bar, always chasing down girls and just doing just stupid stuff. I don't know, it's crazy because I really don't even connect with the person that I started this whole journey as. It's seriously like embarrassing. Like, it's awful to even think that I was that person or did any of those things. And it's kind of weird to talk about because I think people have this belief that like you can't change, right? And honestly, most people can't. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do in your entire life. To totally change your identity is, in my opinion, is something that is so unbelievably hard. And you have to disconnect from everything that you know and believe and that exists in your current world. And for me, I was fortunate that those things kind of fell away halfway on their own, and it was just my job left to cut off the other half of the fat. So now that these really, really bad things happened and I was in a make it or break it situation, I had to do something. And a lot of people will relate with me on this one. What happened to me was the industry of network marketing. And a friend of mine introduced me to network marketing. And in the beginning, you know, I was closed-minded. I didn't really understand the concept. And I'm not in network marketing today, but it was such a huge piece of this whole story that we've got to touch on it. So what happened to me is a friend of mine that I went to high school with, and even like elementary school with, he brought network marketing to my attention. And even though he didn't have any success of his own, he introduced me to somebody who did. And for the first time in my life, I met somebody who in their early 20s was making, you know, $10,000 to $15,000 a month, had the Rolex, had the Mercedes, and I saw it with my own eyes. And I don't think that in my entire life that had ever happened to me. I never really saw that up front in person as a reality. And it sounds crazy because, and I talk about this all the time, but I think that these things worked for me because at the time I was so dumb and naive that to me that seemed attainable. I saw somebody who had something of value and I thought to myself, well, man, if that guy has it, I can have it. And the funny thing is that is 100% true. But to the average person, they probably wouldn't believe that because they're actually too smart, right? They've been through too many things, or they've learned enough in their lifetime, or they've had a great childhood to where they've been told no so many times that they don't believe that they could attain these things. And so the only time I had ever really seen success is through listening to music or watching television or seeing celebrities.
I just want to add one point there from another Myke. Actually, last night I go to my friend Myke Sherbakov's yoga class every Monday night. And he kind of, you know, adds his little 2 cents to some of the things he's reading or thinking about. And he had this great quote by Darren Hardy last night. Is that people only try, like the amount they actually try before they give up is 0.8. It's less than one time on average. So they look at something and say, oh, you know, I'd really love to have a Rolex or travel or whatever, right? But they'll try less than one time on average to actually achieve that result. Isn't that insane? I mean, the universe is set up to give you what you want if you're willing to go after it. And
I agree.
And people just don't even try. They just pre-assume that it's not going to work out.
Yeah. Well,
the past is not equal to the future.
I agree 100%. And I'm sure we'll talk about this here in a bit, but it's funny because as I've gone along this journey, I kind of start to understand why people feel that way. Like I start to, almost as I've quote unquote done it, I start to lose grasp on how to explain how I've done it. So I do see the disconnect of why somebody tries something and they give up, because it's like, who do you trust? Where are the resources? How do you do it? What steps do you follow? And I think once you go through the real authentic process of feeling successful or attaining whatever success is to you, once you get there, you do almost lose grasp of the things that you did to get there, because a lot of those things don't make sense because they're mistakes a lot of the time. So it's like, how do you explain to somebody that the real answer is, hey, you got to just go out there and do it. You got to make the mistakes. And you have to just literally just do it and keep doing it until it happens. And
not
nobody
have
wants
that
to hear
come
that.
across as like a platitude. And then there's another layer of this, which I've been looking at for 10 years, is why does certain advice work for certain people and other advice doesn't work for other people? Because I've had a lot of really successful mentors over the years, and they give me great advice, but if their strengths don't align with my strengths, the advice doesn't work for me, even though it objectively worked for them. And that has been so frustrating. I finally got it licked, but I don't want to dive into a rabbit hole there. But that's another piece to lay on top of it. So like people are all, you know, buying courses and following all the rich network marketers or whoever that's selling them the dream of just do what I did, X, and you'll get Y. And it's just, well, there's a couple things to consider. Like the world's always changing. Change is the only thing that's constant. So the opportunities that work for them may not work for you, right? Past performance is not indicative of future results. That's another thing. Another thing is you don't know who's lying and telling the truth, right? Are you auditing these people? Do you know that they made all that money in the first place? So they're just buying it. They just got credit that they're flashing around with, and then you're the bigger fool, right? So that's another piece. And then on top of that, even if they were successful objectively and they had all that success and you don't have the same flow as them, forget it, right? You got to find mentorship that's specific and considerate to you and your strengths, so that you're not trying to do the same thing as, you know, you're just never going to be a point guard if you're 5'2", you know, unless you're what's the one guy that did it? Oh God, it's going to kill me if I can't think of his name.
Basketball is probably not my strong point.
Yeah. Oh God, it'll kill me. There was one guy that could dunk and he was like 5'2". He was back in like the 80s. Anyway, so the point is, of all this madness, of all the crazy side talk and tangents, is that getting to know yourself and getting after it and being okay to just fail and whack your head against the wall enough, that's what it takes.
Yeah.
And over time, you pick out these little nuggets. You just start to understand, oh, this is who I am. This is what I'm great at, and do more of that. And then miraculously, things start opening up for you, and people start showing up that have, complementary skill sets, and miraculous things start coming in your life, like the exact thing you need at the exact time you need it. And it's overwhelming and it's beautiful. And then when you're grateful for it, more shows up. I don't know if that's been your experience, but that's been my experience.
Absolutely.
The more I try to fight it, the less it works.
Yeah. I just recently finished up a speaking gig earlier this month in Miami, and I had a private conversation with somebody on the side, and I tried to explain this concept a little bit to them, exactly what we're talking about right now. And they were telling me, you know, how do you get around people that are going to push you forward, or how do you find a mentor? And I said, well, think of it like this. I said, imagine that, and I use cars as an example. We have a bunch of clients in the automotive industry. Myself, my brother, we all like cars and things like that. So I gave the car analogy because this person also liked cars. So I said, imagine that you're going to a car club, right? Like a meetup of car people, you know, and you're hanging around them and they all drive, you know, Hondas or Kias or Toyotas or something that are all souped up. You know, chances are if you go to that car meet, those are the types of cars that are going to be there. There is a very small chance that somebody with, you know, a brand new nice Mercedes is going to show up at a Honda car club meet. And imagine how different your life would be if you tried to weasel your way into the Mercedes car club, you know, and you tried to do everything you could to get yourself a Mercedes and you get to the Mercedes car club, imagine how your sphere of influence would change, right? It would be different. Your conversations would be different. You'd be talking about, and in this example, it would be cars or different car parts. And then once you get into that circle of Mercedes, right, what is the next level up? Is it a Bentley? Is it a Ferrari? Imagine if you found a way to get into a circle of people that were going to a Ferrari car club meetup. Imagine how things would change if you were able to get into that circle or that sphere of influence. And that's like a very basic way of explaining what I tried to do. And the funny thing is that it's almost a real life example, because the first young kid I ever saw that was making a ton of money, he drove a Mercedes and he had the Rolex. And I thought to myself, what would happen if I tried to just communicate with these people and watch their videos and try to learn from them? And to touch on the mentorship example that you gave, currently, I don't have a physical real life mentor, and I have in the past. So it just goes to show you, you find a mentor. The guy that I originally met in the beginning, his name was Luke. He was 21. He was making almost $14,000 a month. And at the time, to me, that was like not even that was crazy to me back then. I didn't even know that that was a real thing. I thought, to me, that was like being a gazillionaire.
Right. And that's like more money than most of the adults you probably knew made. I know it was for
absolutely.
me. Like if I would have met a kid making 15 grand a month, I would have spent all my time with that kid back then. 100%. Yeah. I would have been like, show me your ways.
Right. And so you can see the disconnect, right? So I'm in this life of, I don't want to say misery, but I'm just in all these problems, and I meet this kid and I think to myself, man, what if I focused my attention in this direction? And at the time I was naive enough to actually try and bring my friends with me. And that's what the network marketing model teaches. And so that's what I tried to do. And just like probably everybody, I was ignored, and my friends made fun of me, and people started cutting me off, and nobody wanted anything to do with me because I was the guy who was selling energy drinks, But it's funny because now you fast forward 3.5 years later, those people that told me no and that made fun of me, they're still doing the same thing. Yet here I am later, hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue, millions of dollars in overall sales. And it didn't even take me 4 years. But there are certain personality traits that I think hold true to why I'm not one of those people that maybe Darren Hardy talks about, that is in that, the opposite of that 0.08%, right? Like, and I found myself in that percentage by the decisions that I've made along the way that started just from meeting that one guy. And then from there, did as much as I could until I felt like I outgrew that information, and I found another mentor. And for the first time I'm seeing in my life people that are making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month, between $100,000 to $200,000 a month. And again, a new paradigm shift. To me, again, I had now found a new belief that I didn't know was real. It was another shift for me. And he was my mentor for a long time. And he lived out in California. And all throughout 2015 and a good part of the early part of 2016, that was my mentor.
Do you notice how people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime? It doesn't have to necessarily be a long time. Somebody could come into your life for a couple weeks or an afternoon and change it. It's incredible.
Yeah, I agree. And so I haven't had a mentor since that person. Now my mentor is the late Chet Holmes, and I find myself reading his book all the time.
Oh, Chet's great. I met his daughter Amanda a couple times. She's awesome too. Sad loss. And he helped. So if people don't know Chet Holmes, he wrote The Ultimate Sales Machine. He helped Tony Robbins build one of his companies, Breakthrough Technology, along with Mitch Russo and a couple other people. Chet's just a legend. And I never got a chance to meet him, but he's essentially, his work and Tony's work became business mastery. So you can still learn about all his processes and whatnot. And I've done a lot of Tony Robbins. So if you need to know anything about Tony Robbins, just give me a shout.
You could almost be Chet Holmes' stunt double.
What, I look like him?
You guys kind of look similar, yeah.
Interesting. Doppelganger. I like it.
Yeah, you just need some glasses, I think.
That's so funny. So a couple things come up for people. Let's just kind of get practical and tactical here for a minute, because this is what your brain's going to do to you, right? We're wired in a certain way, and overcoming that wiring and the natural inclination, which is the most natural thing in the world, doesn't make you bad or wrong, it makes you human, is the sense of not belonging, right? If we're not enough, we won't be loved. And that is really scary. So when you start stepping outside the box and doing things that most people won't do, especially in your social circle, you start to feel pain, right? Naturally, because your brain's saying, no, what are you doing? Shut up, idiot. I want to belong and keep living, right? Your ego, which is just trying to protect you and do the right thing, is going to jump into your, into your sphere and say, hey, I got to protect you. I got to keep you alive. And then ultimately, why do we exist? Is to survive and replicate. If any of those two things are threatened, we're going to get a message from our brain or our limbic system that's going to create a fearful response. So for you to be able to overcome that in the sense of rejection, for you to be able to overcome that when people are telling you, hey, get out of here, idiot, stop trying to sell me network marketing and energy drinks, and not be able to persevere, a lot of people would be shut down by that, or they would never start in the first place. They would try 0.8 times, not even once.
Right. Yeah. And again, I think the reason I kept going is because my back was against the wall. I felt like I had no other choice but to do this. And I think once I got a glimpse of a different style of living, I think I just latched onto it with everything I had left in me and felt like I had to make this happen. And I think in the beginning, again, I set my goals like so high because I didn't even know that they were high, like, and another thing in network marketing, as much as I love the industry, it's kind of like habit for everybody to exaggerate, so,
yes.
So I've got these young guys, doing well, telling me, oh, you're going to make millions, and I legitimately believed that. And I think because I believed that with all my heart, I think that's why things started to move in that direction. And when I say move, it's not like things just took off. In the entire year of 2014, I think I barely cracked a total income of over $1,000, maybe. I would say maybe, between $1,000 to $1,300 for the entire year of 2014 as I tried network marketing. And it wasn't the perfect solution. It wasn't the answer, but I refer to it almost as a gateway drug. It was what opened my mind. It was what made a huge paradigm shift for me, along with a couple other things, and pointed me in the direction of more of a digital thing, and which touches back on social media, right? And the funny thing is, I do a lot of social media stuff, but here at my agency, we focus a lot on more of lead generation, client acquisition, and paid advertising. And a lot of people talk to me about social media. And in the beginning of my, I guess, internet marketing career was 110% focused on social media, the Twitters and the Snapchats and the Instagram and even Periscope for a while and all this stuff. And I was always on top of it. But the interesting thing is I think I pushed a lot of that stuff because I didn't have a budget. And then once I started to finally get my income up, I learned how powerful paid advertising was. And that was another paradigm shift for me. So that was so kind of the direction.
We're actually, Facebook Live killed the Periscope star, basically is what's going on right now.
It did.
It's so funny how fast things are moving. And it's really true. Like, you could talk about network marketing as the best thing since sliced bread. Warren Buffett even said it's a good business model. It works. But here's the thing is it might not be right for everybody. Right. And it does require a bit of grit. It's like the door-to-door sales or the internet marketing, it takes a little bit of grit. And it's every business model that you'll study, and I've studied a lot, they will have pluses and minuses, right? And you just got to find the one that fits for you. And at the end of the day, you can go to bed knowing that you did your very best for people. And if you come from that place of service, life will support you because life supports that which supports life. So, whatever, might be coming up for people at home because they hear things like network marketing, they don't really understand what that is. Or they hear things like investing or cryptocurrency or this, all of them have pluses and minuses, all of them have risks. Anybody tells you there's no risk or you're going to make $1 billion and there's no risk, run the hell the other way. That person does not have your best interest in heart, or they're just so incompetent, they don't really understand what the hell they're saying, which is just as dangerous and just as bad for you when you end up losing. So that's the big caveat here. And I say it over and over again. I get wonderful people asking me all the time, like, hey, Brad, who do I trust? Is like, trust yourself and educate yourself to make good decisions and consider both sides of the equation and start to frame things in the sense of what's the worst thing that could happen? If I don't know, ask people who know. And what's the best thing that could happen? And then how do I mitigate and relieve some of this risk over here so that this is more likely to happen? And if this happens, am I okay with it? Am I okay with the worst case scenario so that I can focus on the upside? And if you invest like that, time, energy, attention, or money, you're going to get returns because now you're in flow with life. Now you're doing the things that careful stewards of wealth do to generate, to grow, and to give their money away.
I agree 100%. And I think I almost like firmly believe that just about no opportunity is better than another. In a general sense of what we're talking about, surely there's
a million ways to make $1 million.
Yes, exactly.
100%.
And and surely like economic things come into play. You know, there are opportunities that come up at certain times, but I think if in a generic sense of the conversation, no matter what you pick, it's not going to be better than anything else. Well, the only determining factor is you, right? And it's just you as a person. It's playing to your strengths. It's putting in the time. It's putting in the effort, cutting out the distractions, and literally just doing the work. And it's funny because it's very similar to what we were just talking about a minute ago, is as you go down your journey, there's almost this disconnect of being able to help somebody that's a beginner again. And it's because the simple way to put it is it's almost because all of the generic quotes out there from different world leaders, it's like they're all true. And it's just a couple little words and everybody sees them and like it looks like a cute little quote. But it's because those are seriously the real answers. You know, the quotes you see out there that's like, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. It's like, that's true. Like that is the answer. It's like,
and
that's
it's
all you need to know.
situational, right? It's like, it's situational. Sometimes that quote is 100% accurate, but everything is always shifting, and people get really upset because they have this need for certainty. And when things don't work out as they anticipate or expect, they think everything's BS. They start generalizing, right? Because it didn't work out this time in this situation, they give up. When if they just keep going, they're going to find something that works. And once they nail it, they can scale it. But you got to nail it first. You got to nail the thing that's going to work for you based on your strengths, your connections, your resources, whatever you have available to you at that time. And then guess what? It's going to keep changing. The target's going to keep moving over time. So you got to be ready to like roll with that and understand like getting good at thinking like an entrepreneur is much better than a strategy. I can give you the right strategy from Apple and you won't be able to implement it once you get any good, right? I can give you the best strategy in the world. If your mindset sucks, forget it. It's over. It's over before you start. So start focusing on how do I cultivate the beliefs, like that belief wardrobe where I can go in and put on the right hat at the right time where they're actually productive. And that's really it. And Myke, I keep jumping in because there's just so much gold to pull out of the story. And people love stories, but they may miss the lessons and the points because they're either listening for what they want to hear, or they're maybe not in a place where they can really just drill this down. And I hate that about podcasts that just talk, right? And they tell a cute story at the end, you come away, you're like, oh, that was a fun story. I'm going to go back to live my shitty life. No, I want people to actually get value from these podcasts and to understand why you are how you are and how you became that way. So that they can all in turn do it in their way as well. And it's not going to look like Mike Metzger. It's not going to look like Brad Hart or Richard Branson or anything. It's going to look like the person listening.
Yeah. I think, in the beginning of network marketing and really just getting into entrepreneurship as a whole, I used to try and kind of copy a lot of other people, you know, kind of copy the way that they did their Facebook statuses because I thought that was what worked. But the reality is what you just said is that's what worked for that individual. It doesn't mean that it works for everybody. And as much as people want to believe that the solution or the answer or that success lies in, you know, some in-depth case study or some 700-hour program, usually it's quite the contrary. The answer does lie in a simple 30-minute podcast or in a simple conversation or in a simple quote. It's just that people don't act on it. And I actually posted this thing just the other day, funny enough, posting a quote, right? Is that... what did it say? It was basically it was on the fact, and it comes from Notes of the Universe. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's okay. It's awesome. So it was saying something like, the magic of thinking big is in acting big. And when you act small, you might as well be thinking small. Or if you think big, but don't act on it, you might as well be thinking small. And I agree with that 100%. It's not even really about what you're thinking about. It's more or less the action first. And I do think that has been one of the big keys of me moving forward is that I was taking action even when I knew that I didn't really know what I was doing. And I just knew that if I kept doing it, eventually something would happen. And I believed in that so die hard that it did. It finally clicked. And it took about a year, like a year and a half to 2 years before I really started to see success in a full-time income. But for some people, they could never do that. You know, some people, everybody learns differently. Everybody has different personality traits. And some people are not comfortable with not earning income on a consistent, predictable basis. You know, some people, it throws their whole belief system out of whack if they think to themselves, well, oh my goodness, like how did you survive without a stable paycheck? And I'm fortunate because my life has never been a stable paycheck. I've got fired from every job I ever had. And I think that's something that is one of my strengths. I'm okay with winging it, where other people, that would drive them crazy. And so that's just one simple example of how that worked for me, but would totally not work for someone else. So you got to find your strengths.
I can remember a couple of quotes that jumped into my mind, actually. The entrepreneur is the person who's willing to do what most people won't so that they can live like most people can't. That's one piece. And then Kiyosaki, I believe, had a great quote about that, and Rich Dad, Poor Dad as well. I'm just trying to remember the exact circumstances of the quote, but it was like, if you're willing to, oh crap, I'll think of it. Let's keep moving. I apologize. Sometimes
no worries.
This is live TV, guys. I forget sometimes.
But it is funny because like all the answers are in some of these little silly image quotes, but because they're everywhere.
But you only like see how true it is once you've already been through the maelstrom, right? You've been through the gauntlet and you're on the other side. You're like, oh, that's kind of good advice.
Yeah. It's like the answer is right there on Instagram on this post that has 12 likes, but nobody recognizes it. They want the full, 2-year explanation to figure it out.
And here's the thing, and this is, again, if you're thinking about like higher order consequence or the way the universe might be set up, I don't know, I'm not God, but I like to think how he might think. It helps. Oh, that was it. Ask a better question, you'll get a better result, right? The Robert Kiyosaki quote was, it's not, I can't do something, it's how can I do something? And because questions control focus, by asking the right question, how can I do this? Instead of, I can't do this, that changed your life, right? It wasn't a set of circumstances where you were like, oh, I can't be in network marketing or I can't be in digital marketing. It's like, how could I be in that? How could I make it work? How could I make the best next action? How to achieve that result? And why is that important to me at the end of the day, right? So getting really clear on that what and why and asking how from an intelligent place opens up magical things to you. So I like to think, top level order consequences that would serve life at the highest level. And I start to think to myself, I'm like, well, if I was God, and whatever you believe in is fine, flying, insert flying spaghetti monster here. But if I was God, would I want to give everybody all the answers right away? Well, A, that would be boring because they would know the ending. They wouldn't take action. And then B, you wouldn't be able to process all that in one shot. You just wouldn't. Like your level of consciousness, you can only process things that are at or below your level of consciousness currently, right? Otherwise, it would just be noise. Has anybody ever experienced this where like something makes a lot of sense to them today that just they wouldn't even have paid attention to 5 years ago or 10 years ago? I know I do. I have tons of things like that in my life. But then the universe starts talking to you and you're like, oh shit, I wasn't really paying attention before, but now I get it. And thank you for the lessons, right? When they keep compounding and keep compounding. And then you see people who are wealthy who effortlessly make all this money. It's because they've been compounding for a long time. So, just think of it that way. Don't worry about it being 100% or 1,000% better. Just focus on that 1%. How can we get 1% better? How can we ask a 1% better question? How can we take a 1% better action consistently over time, which adds up to 3,778% better over a course of a year? Yes, I did the math. I'm a nerd. Moving on. I don't know. I'm very talkative on this podcast. I'll probably get less talkative as podcasts go on, but I appreciate your patience with me.
I love it.
So Myke, what does life look like today? And what does the next 5 years look like for you?
Man, so life today is great. So once I eventually got over a lot of things and kind of fixed my habits, right? Like that was the transition, is getting healthy, cutting out the drinking. I met an amazing woman. I started waking up early, started eating healthy, started reading books. And that's the long part of the story, right? That's the part where no matter how many podcasts, that would be an autobiography that I got to write one day.
I can't wait to read it.
I know, right? And I can't wait to write it. So maybe I should get to that when we hang up here. So, but if you fast forward through all that, 2016 was a big shift for me. At 27, I made my first 6-figure income, mostly through selling on the phone, which we talked about briefly before we hopped on live here. I met some amazing people, guys that I used to watch on stage and be taking notes from when I was, I had $12 in the bank. And I was borrowing money from my brother and my girlfriend's family. I was watching these guys on stage. In 2016, I finally got the opportunity to meet people like that. I met a guy named Adam. He's become one of my best friends. He's kind of one of the top younger internet marketing coaches out there. He works with Russell Brunson. He's in the inner circle, and he kind of introduced me to a lot of these things. And I started working directly with him, and I started handling his leads. I started learning how to really sell at a high level. I crushed a lot of limiting beliefs and started to make some really big commissions by helping him close deals. I got to start traveling. I upgraded my lifestyle, upgraded where I lived, upgraded my health again. And my big goal, once I had finally accomplished things that I had set out to do, right? And in the beginning, it was a lot of materialistic stuff because I don't think I had any real like core principles to the life I wanted to live yet. My only goal when I started this journey was I need to get out of this hole. I need to make money, right? It was all money, 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 money. And it was almost like I made well over $100,000 in personal income before I had even thought about what do I actually want to do? Like, what do I want to do with my life? And so I was exhausted on the phone. I was spending 10 to 12 hours a day doing this. I had a home office finally, and I had all these things that I wanted, but I wasn't doing the stuff I wanted to do. I wasn't really happy. I was like exhausted, mentally exhausted, physically exhausted. My time was taken up. So to answer your question, my big goal for 2017, like my New Year's, I don't like calling it a resolution, but like my New Year's gotta have it thing was I'm going to transition from working as an individual to taking everything I've learned over the past 3 years and applying it to helping people on a bigger scale and learning how to be a master delegator. And I took this from a couple of different people. So the number one person worth mentioning that really made this click for me was T. Harv Eker. And I didn't actually read the book. I was listening to his podcast interview, of course. And he was talking about this concept of, how do you create abundance in your life, right? And he talks about how do you make a little bit of money? And in order to make a little bit of money, you got to help one person solve one problem. I had already done that. That was kind of like network marketing and slowly getting into digital marketing and webinars and running my first Facebook ad. That was the way that I found how to help one person with one problem. I said, hey, here's what I'm offering. Do you want to buy it? Yes, right? I helped one person. Now, moving forward from there, how do you make a lot of money, right? And that's T. Harv's question. And he talks about now you got to help a lot of people solve that same problem. And that was when I partnered up with Adam and we created an academy to actually teach everybody the stuff that we had learned over the years beforehand. Teaching Facebook ads and teaching Instagram marketing and teaching how to build sales funnels and do press releases and all these different skills that you need in order to really build a business on the internet today. And that was how I discovered how to help a lot of people solve that same problem that they were looking to solve. And there's a lot of internet courses out there today, and that was one of the things that kind of triggered me to be like, okay, I think it's time to move forward. I think it's time to move on to a different journey. And as much as I recommend people, learn from other people and buy courses, I think there's so much of it going on today that people can get kind of stuck in this world of like buying courses, and it's kind of crazy. So my next shift, and the thing that T. Hart brings up, is how do you create abundance and wealth in every area of your life? And it's to help a lot of people solve a lot of problems. And in the beginning, I think that I felt like I wasn't worthy enough to do that. But in 2017, like that was my goal, was to crush all my limiting beliefs and level up again. And that's exactly what I did. So I had the idea. I was like, you know what? I'm going to get an office building and I'm really going to chase down building a real agency. And I had taken on clients like on the side, and I would meet them at Starbucks and help them do social media or, build a website for them and these kind of little a la carte projects on the side. But I spoke to my partner, Adam, that I was working with doing all these sales for. And I was like, man, I'm really keen about this agency idea. I've learned so much and I've got good people behind me. I think I'm going to do it. And it started as a one-man show in January of 2017. Now here we are in end of October, which is crazy. This year has flown by. Now I have a 7-person team. I have 4 people that work with me here in the office right now. And then we have 3 remote. So it's a 7-person team. We run the #1 digital marketing agency in the state of Virginia, here where I live. And we've exploded. Thank you so much. We have exploded in what seems overnight to me.
Woo! Well, let's take a moment to celebrate that, Myke, because if we don't stand up, come on, celebrate.
Hey, let's go.
Celebrate. If we don't celebrate, what the hell is it all for, man? If we just go, because your brain will do this. It'll just be, oh, I accomplished the thing. What's the next thing? Because the law of familiarity very quickly sets in and robs you of your joy. So don't ever forget to celebrate.
It is. I'm actually glad you brought that up.
Congratulations to you and your team.
Thank you so much. Yesterday, we moved into this office building, and then yesterday and over the weekend, really, we actually expanded further on the top floor, and now we have half of the top floor of the whole building. Whereas I started just in one room by myself, and that was it. So, but that's today. My daily focus is delegating, being a real CEO, which was always like my goal and my dream. Delegating, running projects. We have amazing clients. I've gotten to meet celebrities. I've gotten to meet multi-millionaire business owners. We've worked with hosts of radio shows. We've worked with plastic surgeons. I've met different like double platinum streaming artists on Spotify, people like James Arthur and Aaron Carter and Tory Lanez. And we've done some amazing nonprofit work as well. So we've donated our marketing efforts to like the National Alliance of Mental Illness, and it's just been amazing. And
you're getting so much love right now. All the people on Facebook giving you all the love and the hearts and it's beautiful. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much, Myke, for sharing your hero's journey up until this point. And it's amazing to see you come through all this, because 3 years ago you were a bartender.
Yeah.
Cool. Right? There's nothing wrong with being a bartender. I was a bartender. A lot of people are bartenders, but now 3 years later, you've gone through all this growth. And now you're able to contribute at such a higher level than just serving people drinks.
Yeah, I agree 100%. You know, and the serving people drinks thing, it's a good example of like where people start, right? Like you're helping one person solve one problem. Like it's a funny way to relate that, but it is. It's like it's just one step of it. So it's like, how can you move forward?
Great quote, Roger James Hamilton. Since this has been a quote-heavy episode, I recommend you check out Wealth Dynamics and all that great stuff he does. Wealth is simply value times leverage. How do you create value? You solve people's problems. Value is in the eye of the beholder. My problem is different than your problem, is different than her problem, is different than their problem. If you can solve somebody's problem, you have provided value for them, and they will give you money in exchange for it. And then it's just a function of how do you get leverage? How do you help more people with that same problem? How do you systematize it and scale it? Even if it's a service, how do you productize your service?
I love it.
Those are the questions to ask, always.
Yeah.
So Myke, all right, so now you're at the precipice, right? It's on to the next thing. What's the next thing for you guys? Where do you see this thing going in the next 3 to 5 years? Because I know you're going to transform your life again in the next 3 years.
Yeah. So in a couple ways. So now that I've become this delegator, and of course I'm not the best, but now, you know, I'm learning in, you know, October, it's month 10 of the year. 10 months is a relatively short time to be acting CEO, right? But it's amazing running a real business. And I think the next step is really honing down and creating serious processes. And this touches back on why I brought up Chet Holmes. And he's the number one person that I look up to and study with all of the energy I have, is all focused on the agency model. Yes, I mean, and seriously, for anybody who's watching, if there is any book that deliberately and specifically tells you how to become a multi-millionaire business owner, it is that book. You don't need any other book. There is nothing else you need. That book is the number one recommendation I could ever give.
Well, and you don't need any other book besides Myke's upcoming autobiography and the Make More Marbles book, which will be released in 2018. But, you know, besides those two books, you don't need any other book.
Very true. We'll have to work out a deal where when they buy the book, we'll do them a favor. We'll buy the copy of Ultimate Sales Machine and send it to them for free.
I'm good with that. Yeah, we'll make like a little bundle, free plus shipping. I think it'll be perfect.
I think that's a great deal. But it seriously, it is a great book. It's helped me with so many things. It has helped me open my mind to, I don't want to talk down on the things that I've done, but it just really opened my mind to like operating as a real business. And I think a lot of the gurus out there, and plenty of them are my friends, and plenty of them call me to help them with their processes of selling their courses and their membership products and free plus shipping funnels and all these things. And I'm always happy to help them. But I think they forget that they're, at the end of the day, they're trying to run a real business, and a lot of people don't treat it like a real business. And I think the big next step is honing down and creating processes, and exactly what you mentioned just a second ago, productizing and packaging things correctly so that I can now scale, so that I'm not just a multiple 6-figure business, but can go into being multiple 7, 8, 9-figure business on a serious international level. So 5 years, $100 million, I think that'd be great. That's not a set goal of mine, but it's not a bad start. It's huge, it's out there, and it's my way
it's not a lot of money, but you can live on it.
Yeah, I could live. And I think the interesting thing about when we go into the money conversation is when you tie it in with business, it becomes a little bit more of a practical conversation. I think when you have a real business and you know your expenses and you know your P&Ls and you know what you're doing, I think then money goals make a lot more sense than when you're just getting started and you just say, I want to be rich, right? Because you could have a business.
Because you got to start with service. You got to start with service because money comes from service and adding value in what we just described, solving people's problems. So until you're good at that, forget the money tracking, all this stuff. Guys, don't start with that because people get bothered out. How do I incorporate my business? How do I do that? Just start helping people and you'll figure it out. I promise. Start making some money, start finding a consistent way you can make that money, and then have the money and the space and to breathe to be able to let me figure out the next phase, the next phase, the next phase. Because again, you can't download the whole universe at once, guys. You got this very small you don't have broadband. You have this little dial-up connection.
Right.
And hopefully it'll expand over time, but you got to start where you start. So that's awesome. The other book I was going to recommend for anybody looking to productize a service is by John Willingson, I believe. It's called Built to Sell. And I've talked about it on a few different podcasts. I tell my mastermind clients to read it. It's awesome. If you have a service-based business, you want to go big time, Built to Sell is a really great story. It's the same kind of storytelling as like The Go-Giver, which I also recommend by Bob Berg. Check it out.
I love it. Yeah. So I think the interesting thing about the money goals, and to be really clear, what's interesting is as like a business, when you're thinking of not an individual anymore, and now you're the head of an organization, when you think of money, you're able to disconnect it from it being a personal thing, right? So for example, I told you the story of working with Adam, making my first 6 figures. Like I made personally a lot of money. I didn't really make anyone else a lot of money. I made me a lot of money. Now transitioning into this agency thing is so much different because I'm actually making less money on a monthly basis than I was last year, but I'm way more happy. And as a business, we make more money, right? So as a business, monthly, we bring in way more revenue, right? But now we've got expenses, we've got a team. So it's like that outgoing money is now actually contributing to something. It's not sneakers, it's not luxury watches and all those things. And that stuff is great. But I feel so much better that I've gotten over buying that stuff and just going through this personal transition. Then as a real business, now when you're spending money, it's an expense on the business and you're giving someone else a career or a job, or you're hiring a contractor, or you're supporting a small software company that helps you run your business better. And I think getting in the mindset of when you're sending out money to all of these different parts of a real business, it's like, man, I am so thankful for all of the efforts that other people put into their software products and put into their efforts to do things to make my life work. And at the end of the day, that is what allows me to be okay with making less money, but living on a much higher frequency, I'm much happier. And it's funny because my lifestyle really hasn't changed at all. I'm actually more free now. I have more free time to do things like what we're doing right now. I couldn't have done this late last year. There's no way I'd be on the phone selling stuff right now. So it's interesting how perspectives and priorities change. But that's what's relevant right now.
I think you really hit on a lot of really cool pieces there, Myke, and I want to dig into them. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. We can have you back on the show sometime. Would you be open to that?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll find another window soon and we'll continue the conversation. But for now, what I want to learn is, because this is the Make More Marbles podcast, you've been so gracious in sharing your story and your learnings and lessons and practical and tactical advice with us. We'd like to kind of turn around on you and put the spotlight on you. And the way we do that is we ask you, hey, Myke, what's a connection, a resource, an opportunity, a person, or a system that could now help you move your mission forward faster, right? Crops, and let's get it clear for people to help out.
Yeah. So I think most of the people that connect with me on a daily basis, and if you're one of those people that's listening and you'd possibly like to do that, My email is simply info@mykemetzger.com. My name is spelled MykeMetzger. And so feel free to shoot me an email if you have any questions. But most of the inquiries I get, or when people talk to me at events or send me emails or call me, it's always in the digital marketing space. I've always done everything I can to give out the first impression that the internet is where I live. I spend a lot of time understanding the analytics behind what happens on the internet. So today you could be a coach, you could be a business owner, you could own a plumbing company, or you could have a digital business where you're online running webinars. Chances are, hopefully I can have an answer for you. But the best resource I could possibly provide to you is just showing you the tools that I use for my business. So I do have training courses and different products and things, but I'm not the guru that loves to push that stuff. I like people to just make their own conscious decisions. So if you want to check out that stuff, you just go to my website and check it out. It's just mykemetzger.com. But for anybody listening right now, I'd love to offer you the same resources that I just gave away a couple weeks ago at a speaking gig. And all it is just a list of my favorite tools. And it's definitely geared towards if you're a coach or a consultant. So there's two things that I give you right away, which is I give you my number one favorite style of landing page that you can download for free that you can use on your websites and stuff. And I give you a template for a proposal that you could send to your first client. And to just make this really brief, I believe that if you're out there today and you have any sort of talent, and I mean seriously talent, like you got to be good at this, right? You can't be pretending to be an expert or selling something that you don't know anything about. But if you're actually good at something, I think it's a big mistake to not help somebody else accomplish what you've accomplished. Does that make sense? Like if you've lost 100 pounds and you've changed your life, I think if you're not sharing that with someone else, I think you're making a huge mistake. You're hurting your bank account. You're hurting your I call it like your love tank, right? Like, dude, you know how much people love you if you could just help them get over like these huge problems. And if you've solved a massive problem for yourself, right? You guys have heard all about the problems that I've solved for myself. But if you're somebody out there who solved something for yourself and you're not trying to share that with somebody else, I think you're making a mistake. So I've given you a proposal template that shows you how to propose services to someone else. Now, this proposal is geared towards marketing. So when you download it, you'll see basically the proposal that you could send to your first potential client to do marketing for them. Now, I don't recommend that you use it and send it to anybody if you're not good at marketing, right? And marketing is definitely a tough thing to be really good at. But you're welcome to download the template. It's just a PDF and it's free, and you can copy and paste it and change out the words and do whatever you got to do in order to make a great proposal. Now below that, and I'll give you the link here. I'll just give you the link now. So it's mykemetzger.com/consultant. Okay. And if you go to mykemetzger.com/consultant, it's just a bunch of different resources and it's a list of all the tools that I use. And on there, you'll see, every piece of software tool that I use to create an amazing experience and to build a very powerful agency. And the last thing I'll touch on before you guys go download this stuff is that everybody that works with me, in order to get this stuff, has to sign an NDA, because there's no way that I can have them working with me on a daily basis and then all of a sudden breaking off and competing against me. So the fact that anyone listening to this right now can just go download that stuff, don't take it for granted. I mean, seriously, these are the most powerful tools that I use to provide marketing services to my clients that I have found. And I spend, just this year alone, we've spent over $35,000 on software. And I have bought tons of software. I've tested tons of software. I've canceled software and bought new software. I've had to change over and migrate all kinds of different things. And I've tested out so many different things in the digital marketing space that the list that I give you is the best that I've got. And it's tools that I use every single day, from ways to build landing pages and websites to recording browsers and all kinds of different cool stuff, how to grow your email list. And if that's stuff that you're interested in, go to mykemetzger.com/consulting and you can download that stuff for free. Right on. Some of them are affiliate links, just so you guys know. And that just helps me bring down my cost on software if you'd like to use them. If not, no big deal.
Appreciate it, Myke. And you can check out Myke and his whole story at mykemetzger.com and reach out to him, let him know that you enjoyed the podcast, and do the same to us. If you are listening on iTunes, I'd love a subscribe or review. This is a great one. Thank you so much, Myke. And we'd really love to have you back on the show sometime. Any parting words for the audience?
I think the one piece of advice that I think always shocks people is just like, stay dumb. Don't worry about being the smartest and trying to master everything. Just pick one thing, go all in. Don't worry about what anyone else says and just keep doing it. And I promise it will work. Don't get distracted by all the extra information out there. I promise you, you don't need it. Just take action.
Thank you, Myke. I really appreciate you. And thank you on behalf of everybody at Make More Marbles. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to the Make More Marbles podcast. For more tips, hacks, and strategies to create an amazing, abundant life in your health, wealth, and relationships, whatever that means to you, head on over to makemoremarbles.com. Check out our cool explainer video about what we're about and join our community of entrepreneurial game changers. We want to help you level up your life in every possible way. And don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play, wherever you're listening to your podcasts, and please do leave a review. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next podcast.